Admiral Grant Voss sat in the Dominion High Command's war chamber, staring at the transmission replay for the 5th time. The words still didn't make any more sense than they had the first time. "We do not wish to conquer you, humans. We wish to breed with you." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Around the room, officers, scientists, and council members murmured in disbelief, some outright laughing at the audacity of it. Others, like Director Ilara Sato of the Dominion Genetic Division, were already deep in contemplation, analyzing the biological implications of such a request. "This has to be some kind of mistranslation," one of the junior admirals muttered. "It isn't," said Sato, tapping at her holodisplay. "The Zilthri have a perfectly structured linguistic framework. There's no ambiguity in their choice of words." "Then what the hell do they mean by breeding?" asked another officer. Silence filled the chamber. It was one thing for alien species to engage in alliances, trade, or even interstellar conflicts, but reproductive collaboration? That was unheard of. Admiral Voss rubbed his temples. The Zilthri were one of the few species humanity had never engaged with in direct warfare. They were reclusive, rarely venturing beyond their domain, which spanned over 50 well-defended star systems. Yet now, out of nowhere, they had come forward with this desperate proposal. "All right," Voss finally said. "Let's hear what she has to say." The chamber lights dimmed, and the holographic projection of Queen Zalara reactivated in the center of the room. Her alien elegance was undeniable, her silver-tinged skin rippling with faint, bioluminescent patterns, her violet eyes glowing with intelligence beyond human comprehension. "You wish to know why?" Zalara's voice resonated through the chamber. "It is because we are dying." That got everyone's attention. "The Zilthri were once a species of infinite potential," she continued. "We were the architects of genetic perfection, refining ourselves for centuries to become something greater than our origins. We purged weakness, eliminated sickness, and became more than flesh." She gestured, and the holographic display shifted, showing images of Zilthri over the ages. They had once looked more organic, more biological. Over time, their forms had changed, growing more synthetic, more engineered. But in doing so, we doomed ourselves. We reached an evolutionary plateau, our minds expanded, but our instincts withered. We have lost the will to fight, the will to survive against the horrors that lurk beyond this galaxy's light. Another shift in the display, and this time, the image was something far worse. A world in flames. A planet being devoured. "This is what awaits us all," Zalara whispered. "The Devourers." The room collectively tensed. For centuries, the Devourers had been spoken of only in whispers, an unseen terror that erased civilizations from existence. The Dominion had dismissed them as myth. "Your people alone have proven to be the one race in this galaxy that defies all odds," she said. "You do not falter in the face of extinction. You thrive in war. You rise from every devastation, stronger than before. Your genetic code carries something we lack: adaptability, instinct, resilience. We must have it if we are to survive. That is why we come to you now." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some demanded to end negotiations immediately, claiming it was a ploy to manipulate humanity into an irreversible experiment. Others, particularly those in the scientific division, saw opportunity. Admiral Voss raised his hand, silencing the noise. "You're asking us to what? Genetically integrate our species? Create some kind of hybrid?" Zalara nodded. "It is the only way. Our species must merge to create something stronger than either of us alone. We are ready, humans. Just breed us harder, please." A stunned silence followed. "Did she just say?" "Yes," muttered Director Sato, pinching the bridge of her nose. Voss exhaled, glancing around the room. He knew what was coming next. "This is above my pay grade," he said. "Summon the High Council." Because whether they liked it or not, humanity had just been given the strangest war proposal in its history. The Genesis War began on the cold edges of the Zilthri border, where the first Devourer incursion tore through an entire system like a wildfire. Humanity had always prepared for war, but this was something beyond conventional strategy. The Devourers did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They consumed. When the first wave arrived, the Zilthri defenses crumbled within hours. Their fleets, once the pinnacle of biosynthetic warfare, were ripped apart like tissue paper. The Zilthri warriors, bred for perfection, lacked the primal drive to fight a battle where logic dictated only retreat. But humans? They didn't retreat. The Dominion's first response was the Iron Bastion Initiative, a full-scale military intervention deploying elite shock forces to the collapsing Zilthri front. Captain Darius Kale, one of the first human Zilthri hybrids, led the assault on Theta 9, a world caught between salvation and annihilation. His squad of primals, enhanced beyond human limits, deployed from high orbit in armored drop pods, crashing straight into the middle of a planetary siege. What they found on the ground defied reason. The Devourers weren't an army. They were a force of nature, shifting, amorphous horrors that consumed everything in their path. Buildings melted as organic tendrils wrapped around them, pulling them into the writhing mass of flesh that stretched across the cityscape. Screams echoed as survivors were absorbed into the ever-growing biomass. But humanity had brought something the Devourers had never faced before: rage. Darius activated his pulse blades, the Zilthri bio-steel rippling along his forearms as he charged. The primals followed, their enhanced bodies moving faster, hitting harder, tearing into the monstrosities with sheer, unrelenting ferocity. Where the Zilthri had faltered, the hybrids thrived, adapting to the shifting horrors, fighting through the chaos, refusing to break. By the time the battle ended, Theta 9 was still standing. But the cost was high. Half of the primals had perished. Entire cities were left in ruins. And most disturbingly, some of the surviving warriors reported hearing whispers in their minds. The Devourers weren't just consuming bodies. They were trying to infect their minds. Back on the warship Sovereign Wrath, Darius stood in front of a holographic war map, sweat still drying on his brow. Queen Zalara was there, watching him with those unreadable violet eyes. "You fought like a god today," she said. Darius scoffed, wiping blood from his knuckles. "If I were a god, I wouldn't have lost half my men." Zalara stepped closer, her biosynthetic skin shifting slightly as she examined him. "Your kind fascinates me, Darius. No other species fights as you do. Even my own warriors lack this madness." He turned to her, exhaustion battling with curiosity. "You mean instinct?" She shook her head. "No. Desire. The will to defy even the inevitable. To fight even when logic says you should surrender. It is something my people lost long ago." Darius felt something stir within him, not just the remnants of adrenaline, but something deeper. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the beginning of something new. And as Zalara stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, he realized that this war was no longer just about survival. It was about evolution. The war dragged on, and with each battle, the primals changed. At first, the enhancements had been subtle: faster reflexes, accelerated healing, heightened awareness. But as the breeding initiative expanded, with more humans undergoing Zilthri biointegration, something began shifting too fast. The newer generations of hybrids were different. Their bodies adapted on their own. Their wounds closed within minutes. Their eyes glowed with a faint violet hue, the same as the Zilthri matriarchs. Their minds became something else entirely. Darius Kale saw it firsthand in his squad. Lieutenant Raina Voss, one of the second-generation primals, no longer needed sleep. She could hear movements in the vacuum of space. She moved faster than any baseline human or Zilthri, dodging enemy fire before it even landed. Sergeant Jorek Thane had survived 3 separate near-fatal wounds, his body reconstructing itself with an efficiency that defied medical science. Darius himself could feel it happening. After every battle, he sensed his mind expanding. He could predict enemy movements before they happened. His heartbeat synchronized with the ship's systems whenever he interfaced with its neural uplink. Sometimes, he caught himself understanding Zilthri biocoding without having ever studied it. And worst of all, he was beginning to hear the whispers. Not from the Devourers. From the other primals. Zalara noticed it too. She observed Darius with a mix of admiration and concern, watching as his enhancements pushed beyond even what the Zilthri had intended. "You are becoming something more than either human or Zilthri," she told him one night in the war chamber. "But are you still Darius Kale?" He hesitated. "What do you mean?" Zalara's violet eyes glowed softly in the dim light. "Our species were never meant to merge so quickly. Evolution is a slow process, yet we have forced it into a matter of years. And now, some of your kind are changing in ways we do not yet understand." Darius clenched his fist. "We need these changes. We're winning, aren't we?" Zalara's expression darkened. At what cost? The question haunted him, because the primal rebellion had already begun. It started in the outer colonies, where a new faction of hybrids declared independence from both the Dominion and the Zilthri. They called themselves the Ascended. Led by Commander Lucian Hale, one of the first primals to undergo advanced integration, the Ascended rejected human and Zilthri rule alike. They had developed something new, a shared neural consciousness that linked every hybrid within their faction. They saw themselves as the next step in evolution, no longer bound by human limitation or Zilthri stagnation. And worse, they weren't just breaking away. They were hunting. Primals loyal to the Dominion started vanishing. Whole battalions disappeared without a trace, and when they finally found a survivor, a soldier barely clinging to life, his last words chilled Darius to the core. "They don't need orders anymore," the soldier gasped. "They think as one." Darius knew what had to be done. The Ascended had to be stopped before they became something worse than the Devourers themselves. But deep down, a darker thought whispered in his mind. What if they were right? The war against the Devourers was supposed to be the greatest threat to existence. But now the Ascended had become something far worse. They struck without warning, hijacking Dominion and Zilthri ships, overrunning entire systems with uncanny precision. Unlike humans, they felt no fear. Unlike Zilthri, they had no hesitation. Their hive mind linked every hybrid into a singular, evolving entity, one intelligence, millions of bodies. Lucian Hale, once a decorated primal commander, had transformed into something beyond human comprehension. His voice now echoed through hijacked communication channels, reaching every Dominion warship, every Zilthri command post. "The cycle of weakness ends today. The old ways are obsolete. The future belongs to us." Darius Kale had once called Hale his brother. Now, he had no choice but to kill him. The battle for Solace Prime, the last major Dominion bastion before Earth, became the final stand. Fleet Sovereign Wrath, under Admiral Voss, clashed with Ascended warships in orbit while Darius led the final ground assault. Zalara fought beside him, her bio-steel armor gleaming under the shattered sky. "You should not be here," she said, parrying an Ascended warrior with a flick of her energy blade. "I don't plan on dying," Darius shot back, impaling an enemy through the chest. "Not today." The battlefield was chaos. Primals tearing into one another, Ascended warriors moving with inhuman coordination, Dominion forces struggling to hold the line. And at the heart of it all, inside the twisted core of the Ascended nexus, was Lucian Hale. Darius found him standing atop a throne of shifting biometal, his body no longer fully human. His skin pulsed with golden energy, his violet eyes filled with a vast, collective intelligence. "Darius," Hale greeted him like an old friend. "You've already begun to feel it, haven't you? The pull? You're like us now. Why fight it?" Darius gritted his teeth. "Because I choose to be human." Hale smiled, almost sadly. "That's the difference between us, brother. I see what's coming." He lunged. The two warriors clashed, their movements faster than thought. Darius's pulse blades met Hale's energy claws in a storm of light and steel. But no matter how hard Darius fought, Hale was stronger. Faster. His ascended instincts predicted every attack before it even happened. Darius was losing. Until Zalara arrived. She struck from the side, driving her blade deep into Hale's chest, not killing him, but severing his connection to the ascended hive mind for just a moment. And in that instant Darius saw his opening. He activated the primal override, tapping into the very evolution Hale had embraced, but on his own terms. He felt his mind expand, his body synchronize with something greater, but he did not submit. Instead, he overloaded the neural link, forcing the entire ascended network into a shutdown loop. Hale's golden eyes widened in shock. No! With a final strike, Darius ended him. The ascended screamed as their hive mind collapsed. One by one, they fell, their bodies convulsing as the unnatural link shattered. And just like that, the war was over. Months later, the Dominion and Zilthari had rebuilt, stronger than before. The primal program was restructured, its most dangerous aspects dismantled. Some hybrids chose to return to human society. Others remained with the Zilthari, forming a new alliance between their peoples. As for Darius? He stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Wrath, watching the stars. Zalara approached, her presence as commanding as ever. "Oh, what now?" Darius smirked. "We survived." She tilted her head. "Not just survived. We evolved." She took his hand, her touch warm, real. And for the first time in a long, long while, Darius felt hope. The war had ended. But the future? The future was just beginning.